And good evening, and welcome to the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO. We are with you for the next 2 hours until 8 o'clock, talking nothing but high school sports, and we will have a pair of special guests tonight. Coming up at 6:40, the head boys basketball coach at Auburndale High School, Chad Weinfurter, will join us. And then just after 7 o'clock from Newman Catholic High School, their outstanding senior guard for the boys basketball team, Mason Prey. I am Chad Holmes, once again joined by Jeff Gress, and a lot of stuff to go through now as we start to really roll into the winter sports season.
Yeah, I mean, exciting time of the year. A lot of games that went on over the turkey weekend here, and it's just it's a good time of the year to be in.
We'll talk about who was the turkeys and who weren't the turkeys over the past weekend. But let's start with high school boys basketball and the Wisconsin Valley Conference. I guess we'll start off with DC Everest, because Everest, they had a really quite a week. They played 3 games against great competition. They were playing over at Oshkosh West over the weekend. Or was it Oshkosh North? I can't remember which of the Oshkosh.
Oshkosh North.
It was at Oshkosh North. And they knocked off Kingdom Prep Lutheran 66-55 Friday. Lost a tight one to Oshkosh North on Saturday, 76-74. And then came from behind over at Eau Claire Memorial. Eau Claire Memorial has been a really good team in the Big Rivers, and they won 66-65 last night. I'm going to say, first of all, if there's anybody from DC Everest listening tonight, please put your numbers up. Put your numbers on the WIS Sports site. That's where most of the folks around the state get the numbers. No stats for DC Everest over those 3 games. And again, I know that folks can be busy, but if anybody out there from DC Everest is tuned in, it would help us talk about what you're doing out there a lot easier if you're able to get those stats on the WIS Sports website. But bottom line is DC Everest under new coach Oliver Drake, it's a good start.
Well, right, yeah, you want to test yourself when you can, when you go to these outside tournaments, get some competition or different styles of play that you're not going to see out of your conference. And, a nice double-digit win in their first game. Being in a tight game that early on and battling against Oshkosh North is always a good contest. And like you said, they come from behind, win against Eau Claire Memorial, all 3 on the road. And they finally, get back home against Wabinon on Friday. But we got to assume because, again, we don't have the stats, which there's numerous looking on the website, there's numerous teams like that. So it really helps out when you throw those stats out there that Hall is leading the way for him in terms of points.
Wausau West participated in their turkey shoot at the Westfield House over the weekend. Started their season off with a 68-48 win against Stanley Boyd. Really impressed with sophomore Griffin Lang. He played exceptionally well. He had 23 points. Cole Nelson had 19. Warriors then lost in the championship round against Newman Catholic, 69-56, though that was a game that was much more close than the final score would indicate. Warriors shot the ball very well in the first half. Newman came and played much better defense in the second half. Cole Nelson had 26 points in that game for West. Mason Prey, our guest coming up later, had 40 for Newman. And then West last night in a non-conference game defeated Eau Claire North at home, 58-42. Brett Butala, 22 points for West. Cole Nelson, 12. But 2 out of 3 for West. I thought they played well in their game. They lost to Newman Catholic. I was impressed with the Warriors, especially they got some guards who can put it in the hole.
Right, and the game that I watched where they played Newman for that championship game on Saturday, you saw kind of the type of West team you've seen over the years. They're going to be really stingy on their defense. They're going to be up in your face. They're going to make you work for your possessions and points. And then, in games, as they go up and down a little bit, it determines how they shoot. When they were with Newman and hanging around and having the lead, they're shooting the ball really well.
8 3-pointers in the first half.
I mean, shooting really well. And then, you go a little cold. Newman was able to take advantage of that. So I think that's always, for a lot of teams, that's the consistency you got to work for. What happens when we go a little cold? What are we going to rely on? What are we going to lean back on? But, a 2-1 start after the Thanksgiving weekend and continuing to play, as a lot of the Valley teams do, a lot of non-conference games before they get into their schedule where they feel they're going to beat each other up a lot.
The Valley is very interesting in that way because, again, we are still another week plus from the start of the conference season. Right. And they play a couple of games before Christmas, and then it really gets into gear after the start of the new year. Wausau East was hosting an event over at the East Gym over the weekend. And they fell in their opener last Friday to McDonald, 74-72. Isaac Rozadowski had 19, Jesse Napgezik 13, Charlie Cayley 11 for East. Then on Saturday was a tight one for a while, but then Mosinee pulled away, defeating East 88-72. Napgezik had 18 to lead the way for East. Keegan Jershely 34 points for the Mosinee squad. And then last night, another game, another high-scoring game. East at home fell to New London, 79-75. Jesse Napgezik 17, Jaden Garrett 15 for East. 3 losses for East. They're putting up points, but right now they got to find a way to slow down their opponents just a little bit more. 2 tight losses, and then a game that was pretty tight against Mosinee for a while before the Mosinee pulled away. I know you had a chance to see East. What was your takeaway?
Well, one of the things that, what I liked, and not to change from one team to the next, but when teams move on and things graduate a little bit, it helps in terms of what you're able to put out on the floor the next season. I thought one of the things that East did really well on, I saw a lot of kids loose balls, trying to get after the ball a lot. There was an element of heart there that I thought was a big deal and something you can build on with the youth that they still have in the program. Their guard play is what's going to take them through those games. They still have a couple of big guys that can definitely help out as they get more comfortable out there. But I think between Rozwadowski and Napgezik and Garrett, those guys are going to be relied on heavily for some of the points that they're going to put in. And there were moments when I watched within the game when some of their guards were out, whether it was due to foul trouble or just needing a break, it makes a big difference. You had those guys out there. That was a strength in their game. And I think they're, with that heart and that extra element of play, I saw them play a lot harder than last year. And I think that's a big deal when you notice that from 1 year, I guess is what I was trying to make at my first point. And I think that's going to carry them a long way. And we talk about that winning. It's that confidence build. They're still a young team, even though they graduated some seniors last year with heavy relying on that backcourt that are juniors and sophomores.
Stevens Point got roughed up twice. They lost to Bayport Saturday, 66-47. Grant Chardonnay had 17 points for the Panthers. And then last night, Stevens Point got beat by Neenah, 83-55. Neenah, Bayport, from the East, good programs, good teams. I know Bayport off to a very quick start. Again, it's that double-edged sword kind of thing. You don't want to get beat up, but you also play good competition. What's your take on that?
Well, I think the hardest thing when we read some of the rosters at the beginning of the year out of the yearbook was Spash is younger, and that's again the fine line, like you said, you walked. You're trying to brood this confidence and get these guys to understand and get battle tested, and fight and rise to the occasion. And it can go the other way where you don't quite ever get over the hump. So I guess if I'm looking at scores as a coach, I'd like to just see it a little more competitive. Maybe we're losing by 10 or 12, and it's a little tighter with that youth showing. But again, it's still early. They're going to keep testing themselves with some of those non-conference opponents before they get into conference play. But not bad teams are losing to either. Those are some difficult scheduled games that they put up against, and it looks like they're getting some performance where some guys are getting some double-digit scores. So that's going to help out along the way.
Wisconsin Rapids has played 3 games in the past week. They were down south both Friday and Saturday at an event. Friday, they fell to Cuba City in double overtime, 74-68. Caleb Lemieux had 18, Sean Reynes 15. But Rapids, they just ran out of players. They had 4 players foul out of that game. Why is it that the game that goes double overtime is the one that you have all the foul issues?
Right.
But gave it a good battle against an always tough Cuba City squad. And then on Saturday, bounced back with a 63-54 win over Ellsworth. Evan Matthews and Cade Youngworth each had 23 points. And then last night fell to Appleton West. Rapids did 63-59. But I got to say, just judging by the results in the last week, it looks like Rapids has got some foundational pieces to be competitive in the Valley.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Jungworth is 17 points, 7 rebounds. Matthews averaged about 15 a game. And I think the scores, just reflecting on what you see on paper is evidence in of itself that they've taken a little jump forward from last year, where they're going to want to try to, again, the yearbook sets some marks where they think teams are going to finish. And I think Rapids is going to be maybe one of those teams that is going to surprise you a little bit in terms of where they end up at the end of the season, fighting to kind of jump up into the middle of the pack of that conference.
And a team that's expected to be up near the top of the pack in the WVC is Marshfield. And last night they lost to Appleton East, 66-52. Brooks Hinton and Owen Hansen 11. But Appleton East, I'm not sure how good they are this year, but that last season they were an outstanding program. I think, did they make the state tournament last year? I think they did.
I'm not sure.
Well, at the very least, they got to the sectional final because I know that they had beat Superior after Superior beat West in the playoffs. But Appleton East, a good program. Marshfield, I guess, what's your take on that?
Well, again, fighting in these non-conference games over from the Fox Valley area is what a lot of the Valley teams are doing. 14 points. They're going to pop back against La Crosse Central on Friday. Lemaine and Hinson are putting up 16 and 10 respectively. They had, they kind of set a tone right away against Rhinelanders, somebody kind of more in central Wisconsin there that was located in their very first game back on November 22nd. So, again, I think a team that, even though they lost 4 starters, is looking to fight for the top there and hang around Everest and maybe steal a game or two.
Great Northern Conference touched on Mosinee as they beat Wausau East on Saturday. Mosinee also had a nice win against New London on Friday, 68-66. Davin Stoffel, 16 points, 11 rebounds. Keegan Jershely, 14 in that game. But Mosinee getting the wins at Wausau East. Jershely, again, 34 points on Saturday. I'm sure they'll be able to get consistent performances from Stoffel down low. It looks like a nice combination between the guard and the forward play for Mosinee.
Right, and if you even the role players on that team, the Kowalski and a couple other guys that they just hold true to what what they need to do to help get the job done, get the ball to guys that are going to put it in, wait my turn when my shot's open, just play some sticky defense and go get the loose balls and they have a pretty nice combination. Again, not watching enough of them. It's a lot of these teams is how deep you are. Mm-hmm. Can you take that advantage when you go to the bench or when people get in foul trouble? But Stoffel and Jershely are going to carry the load for that team, as you can see in the statistics they're putting up.
Preseason favorite is Northern Pines and saw Pines against Newman on Friday. A 60-58 loss for Pines to Newman. Last second shot, buzzer beater by Isaac Seidel gave the Cardinals the win. Prey 24, Seidel 20. Nolan Lurvey, good basketball player, good guard with 20. Griffin Stemke 17. And then Pines bounced back in the third place game on Saturday, roughed up Stanley Boyd 82-47. 4 players in double figures for Pines. Very good basketball team. They are going to be there. I think there's not only in the conference, but they got some experience. They got talent. They're going to be a very dangerous team.
Well, this is one of those groups that, they've been playing together for so long and they know each other so well that there's just a set of expectations there that they don't want to fall short on. I was impressed by the Lurvey kid at the guard spot. I drove down the lane against Newman on one of the passes and kind of flung it behind his head, hit the kid in mid-stride for a layup. I mean, you know what you're doing when you throw that pass and you hit the guy right on the money. But again, you're going to have, he's the leading rebounder on the team too as a point guard. So you're going to have some numbers out of that. They've got 4 guys that can easily average double digits, and you can see that they're going to be at the top of that conference and doing some difficult, being a difficult team for other teams in the playoffs, and they took out their frustrations on Stanley Boyd the next night, obviously on the scoreboard.
Lakeland, I think they were at the Wausau East thing as well, right?
Yep.
Yeah, they beat Wabena Leona on Friday 76-36. And then lost a 1-point game to New London. Again, New London, a solid program, 46-45. Will Fortier in that game had 21 points. I don't know if you had a chance to see them at all, but Will Fortier is obviously a player that's expected to be one of the better performers in the GNC. Got a really good coach in Rich Fortier as well. They're always going to be there. They're always going to be a team that you have to watch out for in the GNC.
Yeah, Fortier is going to carry the load. He's averaged about 21 points, I think, if the stats were correct, because the stats were up for Lakeland. We saw them
they
there.
were up for one of their games.
Yeah.
Not the Friday games.
Right. So
we'll give them a little credit.
Right. But the other guys looked a little bit in lower tiers on what they're averaging, so he's going to carry the load for them. Again, a team they're always in the mix. They're competitive. You can't overlook them in the Great Northern Conference, and they come to play, and Coach Fortier does a great job. Again, great sense of humor in the yearbook writings of what his team's strengths are, if you ever get a chance to read that. But they're gonna right away. I think their Merrill game was postponed, and they're gonna head to Medford on Friday, so they'll get a real test right away in that conference.
Speaking of Medford, I think one of the great games last night was Medford and Chi High. Chippewa Falls had a 17-point lead. Medford came back, tied it up, but Chippewa Falls in the end wins at 71-69. Logan Baumgartner, 23. Tanner Raby, 17. Great test, great performance for Medford to be down by 17, come back and have a chance to win that game. And again, they test themselves in the non-conference.
Right. And the comeback's a big deal because, when you're losing, things probably aren't going your way. If you're getting down by 17, things just aren't going right. And sometimes, or a lot of times, it's hard to right that ship, to come back from that. Things instantly have to change in terms of people's, how they carry themselves, what they're going to accomplish. They got to buckle down as a group. And, you got Baumgartner and Robbie can really put in some points. So you got scores behind that, so they can score in bundles, and I still think there's a lot of things that they can build off of just by that comeback, even though they fell 2 points short.
Merriwood South last night, the conference got underway with two really good games, two very competitive games. A game that we had here on Bull Falls Radio, Marathon knocked off Auburndale. Auburndale ranked number 6 in the state in D4, but in the end, the Raiders knock off the Eagles 58-53. Grant Warren, 24 points, 8 rebounds. Daniel Lacroix, big factor in that game. He hit about 80% of his shots, had 13 points. Chad Weinfurter, 15. Alex Wilfart, 12 for Auburndale. It's still so early, but that is a significant win for Marathon because it was their first game, and they won it at home as well. You don't want to lose the home game against a conference rival when you're hoping to battle for a conference championship. That, I think for Marathon, it was a little bit more important than Auburndale because Auburndale will get the home game later on. But in this rivalry, home team hasn't really meant a lot over the last few years anyways.
Well, and some things can set a mark. We talked about the scheduling dilemma of how where you place your games, how soon you start, what you do over your holiday breaks, and Marathon tried and true comes back at that first game, and for both those teams, it was a quick test right away out of the gates. Your first conference game is against two teams that are going to battle in that conference and are expected that they want to be at the top of the conference. They want to win that conference, and a tale of two types of teams. Auburndale's very deep with a lot of experience, a handful of guys that can score for Marathon. Warren's a big part of both the offensive and defensive sides and can probably control the game with that height. So I think for Marathon, I think that a little bit bigger deal to get right off on that start, and Auburndale's going to bounce back.
Newman wins in Edgar. That's a big win for the Cards. Again, coming off their win at the Wausau West Turkey Shoot. Last year they lost in Edgar, but last night they defeated the Wildcats 60-54. Mason Prey 24, Isaac Seidel 18, and Connor Kroc 12. It's getting that Connor Kroc points. I think that's also significant for Newman. Good balance and a big win on the road to start off the conference campaign.
Well, and Edgar's never a place to go in, like you said, and get that win. And it's a hard place to shoot. If you talk to some of the guys on at least on our Newman team, when we talk to them, they're all they all love to shoot the ball. They like to be shooters. They're outside scorers, and just tight rims is all they ever talk about. So it's already in their head going into the gym. And, a couple guys I bumped into today in the hallways at school just talked about it was one they had to grind out. Mm-hmm. Things didn't go their way. They didn't shoot well. They said we didn't play well. And sometimes you need those games to kind of, we didn't do this, and this, right? When we do it, we're going to be very dangerous, but we found a way to win. And down the stretch, that's a big deal. And the names you listed, you're going to get production. And some of these guys are getting more production inside the arc than they have ever, which is good to see, because if they can go inside and outside, they're going to be a very deadly team.
And the two teams from the Merriwood South who did not play a conference game yet, Stratford and Assumption. Stratford last night defeated Greenwood 79-45. Ashton Wrench, 22 points for Stratford. And Assumption at their Cranberry Classic over the weekend, they knocked off Nakusa Friday 64-54. Ryan Shaw led 4 Royals in double figures with 16. And then Saturday, taking on the number 1 ranked team in the state in D5, Marshfield Columbus. Columbus knocked off Assumption 79-68. Emmett Konishny had 31 points for the Dons. Ryan Shaw, 22 for Assumption. But I guess overall for the weekend for Assumption, a solid start, getting a win and playing well against Columbus. And Stratford doing Stratford things as they transition from winning a state championship on the gridiron back under the hardwood.
Yeah, and that for Coach Schmidt and Stratford, that's you want to. They took a little time to get back in the swings. Probably, a good enough game to win that first one, but won it handily too. So they had to do things right in that game, and I think getting them back out and kind of finding their identity without Cameron Dahl, who was a big part of their team, and moving forward, and is going to be good steps for them. Assumption to see them get the win, be competitive against Columbus. I think that's a good match for them, and they're doing that on their home floor.
Mm-hmm. Bottom line is Merriwood South looks like again from top to bottom, outstanding.
Yeah, there's not going to be an easy game because I think Assumption has taken a step forward. Edgar, the guys went from sophomores to juniors, and it's going to be a war on most nights.
I want to touch on the CWC North for Northland Lutheran. That last night they lost to Almond Bancroft 77-45. Karsten Sart 19 points, but Northland, Almond's not an easy matchup for a school. I was looking at the numbers. I think 60-some kids enrollment for Northland Lutheran High School. That's a challenge against a school like Almond.
Yeah, and a little bigger, a little bit harder, a little more difficult, and Almond's got that tradition where they've been a good team in Division 5 for a long time, and they got a couple of key players in Lamb and there's other one name that's eluding me right now, but they've got some tradition there in a good program, and Northern Lutheran, is going to have to continue to find their identity. They have a lot of breaks in their game schedule, which I don't know if that's always the most consistent thing either.
Right. Got to take a break, but we'll talk about what's coming up in boys basketball later in the program. But after the break, we're going to talk about what's been going on with the girls. Some holiday tournaments as well over Thanksgiving weekend. And we'll discuss what's going on with girls high school basketball coming up as we continue here on the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio 98.9 and 1230. It's the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO. With Jeff Gress, I'm Chad Holmes. Again, coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we'll talk to the head boys basketball coach at Auburndale High School. Probably licking the wounds a little bit after last night's loss at Marathon, but still very highly regarded, ranked basketball team, Chad Weinfurter. And then just after 7 o'clock, we'll be joined by Mason Prey, the outstanding senior guard for the Newman Catholic Cardinals. Let's turn to girls high school basketball. Again, lots of activity going on over the holiday weekend. Wausau West went to Kettle Moraine to a big event, and also Stevens Point was down at Kettle Moraine as well. But the West Warriors, they faced a couple of outstanding opponents on Friday. Fell to Germantown 76-58. Lexi White had 15. Kenzie Deaton 10 for the Warriors. KK Arnold, who is a recruit to the University of Connecticut, she was terrific for Germantown, 24 points. Saturday, the Warriors fell by 18 again, 72-54 to Hortonville, another ranked team in the top 10. Lexi White had 21 points in that game. Warriors, 3 ranked opponents, 3 big losses, and again, I think it's that double-edged sword. You test yourself, but at the same time, you hope to get a little more out of those 3 games in terms of the tightness of the games.
Well, and you'll see. I mean, again, without having game film or actually physically watching the games, going off of what I see on paper, you want to tighten those scores up a little bit to feel like that competition was worthwhile. But I think it ultimately, no matter what that score, it's going to strengthen you to a degree. I guess, you'll see when they play against Oak Hill North on Tuesday, they're going to have, they still have the same girls that can put the ball in the basket. They like to create a lot of points out of transition. So, once conference season rolls around, it's going to be fine. I think this is you're going to look at them and, those are going to kind of be their losses, some of those tough non-conference games. Around the other games, they're going to pull them out and have a great record leading in the playoffs.
Stevens Point played 3 games, and I think Stevens Point, again, is the team they could Wausau West will keep a tight eye on in the WVC. Spash defeated Slinger Friday at that Kettle Moraine event, 84-51. Thing that impressed me in that game about Stevens Point is 5 different Panthers were in double figures between 11 and 18 points. Stevens Point on Saturday fell to New Berlin West, 48-37. Emma Josie had 12 points. And then last night, Spash knocked off La Crosse Central over in La Crosse, 57-46. Josie had 20 points in that game. That Stevens Point team is to be a solid team. I think it's going to be right there with West and Marshfield in the WVC.
Yeah, they're one of those teams that obviously with the rivalry and the games that they played back and forth over the years, West is not going to look past just because of the closeness of the towns. Marshfield and Spash are always a little bit of a rivalry. And I think, again, doing what a lot of these teams do, we're going to get out of the area and challenge ourselves. Sound like Kettle Moraine had a very good tournament over the weekend and a lot of good competition down there.
Unfortunately, I think we jinxed Merrill. from last week.
Yeah, sorry, Coach DeBoer. You came here and said it, and then that's on us.
The Blue Jays played in the Cranberry Classic in Rapids. They fell to Columbus Catholic 50-39 on Friday. Maya Ott had 19 points. Saturday, Wabeno Leona knocked off Merrill 49-43. Ott had 21. Wabeno Leona actually gave, we'll talk in a moment, Assumption quite a battle in the first day of that tournament. So for Merrill, again, it's a situation where, Columbus is always a solid basketball program. I think Wabeno Leona is also very good based on what they were able to do against Assumption. But for Merrill, it was good while it lasted, the 3-0 start, but they'll lick their wounds and get back into action coming up. But obviously they wanted to, I think, do a little better over in Rapids on the weekend.
Yeah, I think they had hopes, if nothing else, just a split. But, again, score-wise, looks like it was competitive. That 39-50 could be free throws at the end and 6-point game against Wabeno Leona. And you're still getting a point production out of Ott, who's come a long way from what Coach DeBoer said, and Pazorski. And there's still one other. What's the other girl's name we're missing?
Prey and
yeah.
But she's coming off that knee injury, and I think it probably was, in the run-up, she kind of struggled on. And I think that may be the difference. Again,
that could be a player to watch to see if that kind of continues to tweak that winning season, that confidence. And this looks like they're playing in a better spot, though. They got a couple wins early, played competitively, and they're going to look to continue that into a tough girls Wisconsin Valley Conference.
Wausau East beat Mosinee on Friday, 56-50. Charlie Place had 16 for East in that game. Talon Jersley, 16 for Mosinee. Great confidence booster for the Jacks, but then last night kind of took one on the chin. 78-16 at New London. No East player scored more than 4. So you got the positive, but you also know there's still plenty of work to do.
Yeah, I think for what that program's been through and just some of the challenges they've had in terms of getting the wins, anytime you can get that, and you got one against a team that was, Mosinee was very good last year, and they're trying to find themselves this year with graduation going through. And tough part is when you come back to that next game and just don't probably play up to par with what the discrepancy in the score is. So, you get back to the practice as soon as you can and you start fixing things that weren't successful from that game.
And DC Everest still trying to find their way. Evergreens are now 0-5. They fell 49-47 to Rhinelander Friday. Braylon Byler had 19, Katie Schultz 13. But the Evergreens have to be ruining their 3-point field goal shooting that night because you lose by 2 and you go 3 for 24 behind the arc. You feel like if you go 4 for 24, you may have won the basketball game. Everest then fell to Crandon on Saturday, 50-36. Braylon Byler had most of the production for the Evergreens with 20 points in that game. And then last night fell at Green Bay Preble 62-39. Katie Schultz had 12 in that game. Again, the one that kind of probably has to stick in Coach Schilling's craw is that 2-point loss to Rhinelander where the 3-point shooting was so poor. He had a chance to win that basketball game if he had a little bit more from behind the arc.
Yeah, Byler's going to be the girl that they're going to use, for most of their scoring based on the stats she's accumulating so far, and a little bit of a tough stretch. You want to get that monkey off your back and get that first win. And the problem with the next game you roll into is I think Mosinee's standing at 0-4 right now too, and those two they play each other next. So one's 0-5, one's 0-4. Obviously somebody's going to come out with that W, but you got to really be hungry for it. You got to be willing to fix some of the mistakes, and when you can look at and find one little thing, like you said, like the 3-point shooting, or we weren't good enough on the glass, or too many turnovers. Those things, things you work out in practice, but things that as a coach they ultimately bug you till you see them fixed on the game floor.
GNC, you said it, Mosinee off to an 0-4 start. In addition to falling to East Friday, they lost to Hudson Saturday, 57-35. Britt Fitzgerald had 18. I think the good news for Mosinee is that the game against Lakeland was postponed. A little bit of fortuitous luck, I think, because for a team like Mosinee, they want to build. And again, we spoke of it last week. You can't estimate the project right now for Mosinee because they had so many seniors. I mean, the seniors really carried that team to incredible heights a year ago. It's going to take time. These are kids in new roles, younger performers who have not had the varsity experience. They need time right now and just experience.
Right. And so you look minute by minute, play by play. what they can gain through that and how much they can grow. And I think you look at the little things that get better and focus on, simplicity in the game to help when younger players are starting to pick up the pace and the pieces due to graduation. And I think Mosinee is going to be one of those teams. And with Lakeland, coming at them, that was a good game where the snow got in the way, because I think Lakeland's been with their non-conference schedule right away early on and is just waiting to get into that conference schedule.
Last night, there were two great Northern Conference games played. Rhinelander defeated Tomahawk 68-41. Amtigo over Northern Pines 50-23. Again, I think those were not unexpected. Pines right now is struggling badly on the girls' side, and Tomahawk has been for a while. Rhinelander's been a pretty solid program. They also played in that Kislow tournament at East Saturday. They lost to a Rhinelander 51-37. But again, looking at the league right now, boy, it looks like Lakeland and the rest at this point. Maybe Medford is a team to keep an eye on as well, and there'll be a big Lakeland-Medford game coming up here in the next few days.
Well, and Lamers is scoring a lot of points for Rhinelander. So I think, like you said, Lakeland's kind of at the top. They're going to be the team to beat. But, next, Rhinelander, Medford in that battle. Mosinee, if they can progress some of that youth and move them forward, might be hanging in there. And then, like you said, Pines, Tomahawk always searching for as many W's as they can.
Merriwood South, no conference activity on the girls' side in the league. Newman Catholic won a pair of games at Wausau East over the weekend. They defeated the aforementioned Northern Pines 50-26 on Friday, and then edged McDonald Catholic 42-41 on Saturday. Newman, I think we touched on it last week as well. They're winning the games they need to win, supposed to win. It's about taking that next step right now, and they'll have an opportunity later in the week when they go to an undefeated Athens team in a crossover. But for Newman Catholic, getting the job done.
Right, and sometimes at the end of the day as a coach, it's like, whatever means possible. If we're winning by 1 or 2, or we beat them by 20, it's just nice to get the W's. That builds confidence. I watched Newman play a couple times over the weekend. Thought they did a lot of solid things in terms of moving the ball, getting up and down the floor, trying to play defensively, getting the inside and outside looks. So I think there's a lot of sitting at 3-2 is a nice record for them right now. I think as they go, and as they showed last year a little bit too, is what are you going to do in the conference? What are you going to do against the teams in both when you play them in the Merriwood North and the Merriwood South? Because I think they're going to win most of their non-conference games.
Auburndale looks like a very good basketball team on the girls' side. They played a couple of non-conference games this week. Monday, they defeated Rochelle 66-45. Last night, they rolled past Manawa 55-26. Auburndale, I mean, if you're looking for anybody that can challenge Assumption at this point, it would probably be Auburndale, right?
Oh, yeah. Aui is 8 rebounds, 17 points a game. Krings gets another double-digit point total for her every time she shows up. And I think they're going to be the one that's going to get after Assumption. I mean, they're sitting at 4-0 right now, which is 4 solid wins on what they've had. And I think they're a team that's been built around that experience. We've talked about Aui. We think she's been around 6 years. I mean, right. She's got the experience, and that team, it's a solid basketball team for the Merriwood South.
And Assumption was challenged at their tournament over the weekend. On Friday, they played Wabeno Leona. It was 22-14 Wabeno Leona at halftime, but then Assumption outscored Wabeno Leona 27-16 in the second half to win 41-38. And then they knocked off Columbus, more solid effort, 51-36 on Saturday. Anna Schooley had 16 points in that game for Assumption. Assumption is going to be there. Even last year, there were some bumps in the road early in the campaign, but they know the map, the road map to ultimate success in the conference and also in the postseason.
Well, there's tradition that builds from what you were able to do a year ago, and Schooley and Shaw are averaging 15 and 14 roughly with respect to some of the other girls. And I think, the test was going to be with that point guard to graduation, and moving on was what are they going to do? So I don't think they're always going to win pretty right away, but I think that they're going to do some solid things in that conference, and they have that tradition that goes on.
That's right. Merriwood North, Phillips and Athens, both undefeated. Both teams, I think, off to really good starts, and a couple of teams that will be very competitive in the crossovers in the Merriwood. Phillips beat Three Lakes 80-47. Athens over Spencer 75-24. Those games on Monday. Giselle Hartwig 22, Sophia Coker 20 for Athens. Abbotsford also victorious, beating Greenwood 60-33 in a non-conference game. But I think Phillips and Athens both have the potential to be a bit of a factor, both in terms of the Marywood North, but also in who they beat from the Marywood South.
Well, Athens, again, if stats hold, Athens is 4-0, hanging around that top, just like Assumption and Auburndale are in their overall records. I think with the success that they had on the volleyball court, they take some of those girls that are athletes and playing on the basketball court now. Two of them were averaging 17 points if the stats were accurately distributed where they should. And Phillips, you got Eggebrecht up there, again, hanging out and doing her job at 13. They got another player at Eckert pulling out 13 a game. So I think those are two teams that are going to challenge a lot of the Marywood South teams.
And CWC North, Northland Lutheran did not play in the past week, but the thing that kind of jumped out, I looked at it, for the conference, the teams have combined to play 10 games so far. They've won one game. Yeah. So they're all looking forward to playing conference games is the bottom line.
Yep. And for Northern Lutheran, I think the biggest part you hang out is sometimes you look at the dates of these last games, and it's hard because I think the kids they've practiced for a little bit before, they want to get out of that practice mentality and get to those game schedules and start wailing on each other. So I think sometimes it's hard when you don't see a lot of games or you're not in your conference yet where it's like a safe comfort zone to hang out sometimes.
Any final thoughts before we take a break? Did I forget anything here with the girls?
I'm looking quick. Did we hit Wittenberg?
Oh, yeah, I forgot. Wittenberg in
girls.
Marathon last night. Yeah, Wittenberg. That's why I asked. Wittenberg really was impressive defeating Marathon last night. What was the score here? Let me find that.
63-35, I think.
63-35. Reese Rogowski at 20 points. But Wittenberg, they are looking very solid early. Rogowski, great experience, but they got some younger players doing very well. Wittenberg-Burnham was going to be a factor.
Well, right. Yeah, that's a quality win over, we always talk about how Coach Schneider has teams ready and competitive, and that's a nice win over a Marywood South team that's had good runs. And, Rogowski, 20 points a game on a given night if she wants. And I think I can't remember which one, if she was Channel 9 Athlete of the Week just recently or Channel 7, which channel, one or the other. And I think, she's going to just kind of guide that team, lead that team, and they're going to fill them behind and a 4-0 mark off to a good start.
And we'll talk about a really good conference opener they have coming up on Friday against Shiocton, both expected to be in the top 3 in that conference. So we'll talk about that when we discuss the upcoming week of girls high school basketball later on in the program. But coming up, we'll have our two guests in a little bit. In about 20 minutes, we'll be joined by Mason Prey, the Newman Catholic senior guard, as our student-athlete guest. And coming up next, we'll talk to the head boys basketball coach at Auburndale High School, number 6th ranked team in the state in Division 4. We'll talk to Chad Weinfurter coming up next. It's the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 12. And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXDO. And of course, we also post right after the show ends. We got that figured out right on our website. Go to bullfallsradio.com, click on sports, click on Big High School Sports Show, and you can hear this show and all of our other shows as a podcast. With Jeff Grass, I am Chad Holmes, and we're very happy to welcome our coach guest for this week from Auburndale High School, the head coach of the Eagles, Chad Weinfurter. And Coach, again, we appreciate you spending a few minutes with us.
Hey, no problem.
Well, it is the start of the season. Got 2 games under your belt. Got your first conference game. I guess it doesn't take very long to realize that in the Marywood South, once you get into the conference, there are no easy games. Went to Marathon last night. Played a tight one against the Red Raiders. Came up just short. But some things never change, do they?
No. And I think the conference especially, I might say it every year, but it really seems strong this year. I've had the good fortune to watch Newman and Assumption play already. And then, of course, Edgar played Newman in a tight game last night. And of course, we lost the Marathon. It's no nights off. That's the truth.
Well, and Coach, just, as coaches, you always, you're constantly learning. You're constantly taking away things from whatever was played in the game. Tough early on. Tough game right away. It's just you like you said, you don't get a night off. You play a tough opponent right away. What do you take away from last night's game that helps you going forward?
Well, I think it just brings the realization to our kids, and I think they knew this already, but that every game is a battle, and I told them going into the game, and we kind of revisited it today, that we think the Marywood South is one of the best, if not the best, small school boys basketball conference in the state, and you have to prove yourself every night, and if you are even a little bit off, you can get exposed pretty easily, and Marathon exposed some of our flaws last night and some things that we need to work on, and you'd rather learn that in a victory, but sometimes you got to learn it the hard way.
And Coach, Chad and I have talked off air a number of times. We were kind of debating it on last week's show too, and we're just curious what your thoughts are in terms of the scheduling. Because some teams, they play on the very first night, they can get a game in. Other teams, might just wait till the holidays. Other teams wait till after. Like Marathon played after, you guys played before. Some teams are busy over the holidays, and coaches use it in different ways. I guess I don't know if you want to share a little bit about your philosophy in the what you think might be the best way to schedule, and if I don't know if there's a better way, a different way, or a way to do it. If just your thoughts on scheduling your games and how you think it best impacts your team.
Yeah, there's a few different things. I think with a veteran club like we have coming back, I think it's probably a good thing to play early. Those guys are a little more advanced as far as what we want to do and things like that. And it's good to get a game in early like we did against a really good opponent in Colby last week. They had a lot of guys back as well. I think that served us both very well. If I had a little more experienced team, then I'd probably wait maybe a week or so to schedule. Last year at our all-conference meeting, Coach Huss from Edgar brought something to the table where he wanted our conference season moved back a week, so we could get maybe a couple of non-conference games in before we start the schedule, but that kind of fell by the wayside. We as coaches wanted it, but the people that get paid a little more money than we do, higher ups, decided against that. So I think it really depends what kind of club you have coming back. I know there's some coaches that even if they have a young club, they want to get that first game out of the way and get those nerves kind of out of the way. And also, you have scrimmages, but the scrimmages don't always show what maybe you don't see in practice, some weaknesses and things like that. And sometimes early games can show you that, and you can really use it as a tool to improve.
Again, we're talking to Chad Weinfurter, the head boys basketball coach at Auburndale High School, here on the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Well, let's delve into that experienced crew, because you do have a number of kids that have performed very well for your squad in terms of the past, and now starting this new season, got kids that can put it in the hole. Who are both in terms of what they do on the court and what they do in terms of leading their teammates, who are the biggest voices and the biggest leaders on this squad?
We have a really strong senior group as far as athletes, and they're really good chemistry-wise, not real vocal, which is okay. They kind of lead, as a collective group, which I'm fine with. My son actually, as a junior, Caden now has, and he gets along real well with these seniors. Our whole group is really tight. The juniors that are on the team, the seniors, the sophomores. But he's kind of just naturally with being around me and around his brothers and things like that. He's kind of taken a little bit of a leadership role as far as the vocal part of it in practice. And I think that since our kids get along so well, they accept that really well, because a number of them aren't maybe as comfortable being vocal. They lead more by example. So it's a really good dynamic I think we have. I'd like to see a little more, vocal leadership out of some of the seniors, but sometimes it gets them out of their comfort zone. That can be a good thing, can be a bad thing, but as long as they're all working together and things like that, the leadership, I think, will be fine.
And Coach, looking at your just your time spent on the sidelines, I'm always curious, like, because Coach, you have highs and lows, you have moments where, there's other things you could be doing, but there's things that always keep calling you back too. So even, after all this time spent from the time when you were you've been at Auburndale a long time, from player to assistant to head coach, and you got your sons coming through and all that stuff. What's the best part about being a high school boys basketball coach?
I've always really enjoyed being part of a team, whether it being a player, an assistant coach, and now, kind of being the leader of the whole group as the head coach. I really enjoy that part of it, and I think that's something when I do get out that I'll miss, and that'll be a void. But, being around the kids, especially when you have good kids like I do, and I've been very very lucky to have a lot of them over the years. The relationships and things like that, hard to replace. It's something that maybe in other parts of society you just don't get. And hopefully I'm making an impact on their lives. And a number of them that have graduated still stay in contact, and things like that are really mean a lot to me. I have those personal relationships, and I think it's a special thing that unless you've been a coach, I don't think many people get to experience that part of life. So I think that's a neat thing that we get to do, and hopefully I can do it for a little while longer here. I don't have necessarily a definitive date. I'm going to hang it up, but I'll coach through Caden, and after he graduates, we'll kind of take it year by year, and we'll see. It's just kind of a feel type of thing.
And how about looking back, because I know just looking at your schedule over the years, you guys always are you challenge yourself to be playoff ready. You're looking at your non-conference schedule as well as your conference. So maybe starting off with the conference one. I mean, you jumped it right into it. Last night there was no rest for the weary, and looking at the South, what we know how strong it is. And there's just different elements. What do you see coming out of those teams you're going to see week in and week out? And then any surprises in the North, because those also count as conference games. And as much as you got to get up for the games that you're seeing out of the guys in the South, these Northern games can't be overlooked either.
Yeah, with the coaches we have in the South, especially, you start with Adam last night. He's had great success. He's taken his team to a state championship game. You've got David Huss over at Edgar, who went to the state tournament a couple years ago. You've got Kurt Schmidt at Stratford, who, if not probably for the COVID shutdown that year, they probably would have made it to the state tournament, had a great shot at winning the state tournament. And then I don't know Coach Waldvogel very well, but Newman looks very sharp in the game that I saw him against a really good Northland Pines team. And then Coach Paltz has got some talent over at Assumption, and he was part of a girls program that won multiple state titles. I just think as far as the coaching goes and the talent, it doesn't get any better. And as a coach, you really love that. Of course, everybody would like an easy win here and there, but I think anybody who's a coach is a competitor, and to compete against those guys and try to come up with, different little things that maybe can just increase the advantage by a little bit to your team is always the thing I think we're all searching for. I think we all get along really well. I've known Kurt for years. We have boys the same age. Coach Jacobson, I got to know him really well. I've got some friends over at Marathon, and their coaching staff's always been good. Talking to Dave Huss and how he's built that program up. When he took it over, it wasn't very good. I just think that there's so much respect for each other's programs and each other's athletes that it's not a bitter rivalry type thing. I mean, maybe for some of the fans it is, but it certainly isn't for the coaches or our players. I think it's one of those things that it's healthy, and I think it's really good for the kids. I'd rather be in this conference than maybe another conference where you'd run roughshod over a number of the teams, and maybe you wouldn't learn a whole lot about yourselves along the way.
And any, because I get long-winded, obviously, when I ask a question. And so if you forget the back half, it's my fault. Any like surprises in the North? I think personally, it's nice that over the last years they've been counted as conference games. It makes it a little more viable maybe for playing for something. But any surprises up in that conference this year?
I don't know about surprises. I know the Shawamigan team is got some talent coming back. They've got 4 starters back, including, I believe, Mark Miller ranked Isaiah Dietz as one of the top 50 players in Wisconsin. So I think he's a kid, and that team with 4 starters back are probably going to be a real nice team. Prentice has got a couple players back. The Makovsky kid's really a nice player. Athens has the Yankee kid who's a big player. There's a lot of talented bigs up north, and I think down south, I think we've got some wings. Of course, you got Grant Warren, who there's probably nobody better in the area than him at 6'9". But we've got a lot of talented wings and guards, I think, here in the south, and I think we're going to see some talented bigs in the north.
And, Coach, we just have a couple of minutes left. I have an interesting question because last week we had a girls' basketball coach on who said the new seeding with the computers actually made him change their non-conference schedule, that he learned something, that in terms of getting the best seeding possible, that a little bit different in terms of the thoughts. Has that changed your thoughts at all, going through that last year?
Well, I wish we had a little more clarification on what actually goes into the formula. I know a lot of it is your own winning percentage, your opponent's winning percentage, and the opponent's winning percentage. So I think that maybe that's, kind of enlightened a lot of coaches that if you schedule some teams with better records, you're going to have a better seeding. Now, with our conference, a lot of times we beat each other up, and that can affect it. Can be good, can be bad. But I think when you schedule non-conference games, you really have to be cognizant of that if you want it to impact your seeding, because I think that's a huge part of it. But we haven't gotten a complete formula and things like that. And I know some other coaches have called around and, they're trying to schedule teams that have better records. Now, I don't think that, I'm not sure, and maybe it's the information's there and I just haven't seen it, but for example, if we go play a upper division team, like I know some like Marathon will play Mosinee, and there's years we played Mosinee and maybe some of these bigger teams, and this year, like even Colby is Division III. I'm not sure if playing up a division really helps you anymore unless they've got a good record. Whereas before, you could kind of use that in seeding meetings as like, we played a Division II team and obviously much bigger school, but some stronger athletes, things like that. That may be going by the wayside if you're really worried about that seeding. Myself, I don't think it's really affected our schedule a whole lot. I like to see some different styles of basketball rather than worrying about who's going to have a great team and things like that. Because I think if you schedule some different styles where you're going to see some different zones, some presses, some different ways that teams will play you, faster pace.
Coach,
slower
I'm going to have to
you.
interrupt you. We're coming up on a hard break here, but
okay.
Really. And welcome back. It is hour number 2 of the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO. Kind of came up on a hard break there with Coach Chad Weinfurter of Auburndale. We thank the Auburndale coach for joining us here tonight. And now, to start off hour number 2, we are joined by our student-athlete guest for this week from Newman Catholic High School, outstanding senior guard, Mason Prey. Mason, thanks for popping on over.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And if we have you move a little closer to the microphone, that'd be terrific. I'm going to start off by talking about the start of this season. Your team off to a 3-0 start. The weekend was outstanding. Playing in a very good tournament over at Wausau West. Faced a Northern Pines team that's expected to be maybe the champs of the Great Northern and also make a deep playoff run, and then, of course, play a Division I school in Wausau West on Saturday where you're able to pop in 40 points in a victory. And then, of course, going to Edgar, which is never an easy place to play, as you guys found out last season. Really a real solid start. What's been working well for you and for your teammates so far this year?
To start off the season, it was kind of tough. We didn't really know who our coach was going to be, but I think, just Coach Weinfurter coming in and just, the guys really bought into what he's trying to do. And, those first 3 games, we really just, hammered home, trying to defend well. And then the offense comes on its own, and we were just fortunate enough to get those 3 wins.
And what do you think, looking at your team, you guys have been around each other for a long time, and later on we'll talk a little bit about that journey. But, what makes you guys dangerous? Whether teams are scouting you, playing against you, any division, it's a tough guard, I think, in my mind. So just out of your own thoughts, what makes you guys such a dangerous team?
Well, to start, I think, it starts on defense, like I was saying. We run a hard-nosed man, and then if that's not working, we have a few good zones that we're really trying to dial in for, to make a deep postseason run. But then, with the defense, the offense comes, obviously I can score it. And then, we got Isaac and Connor and Eli and all those guys. They can just score on any given night. So just, having multiple options on any given night is just huge for us.
One of the things I noticed in your first game that showed, I thought, growth from maybe even last season is in that game against Pines. You guys came out and you took the lead quickly, and you had the lead pretty much throughout the first half into the second half. And like we kind of knew, Pines was going to make a move. They're just too good. They're going to have a run during the course of the game. And they took, I think, either a 5 or 7 point lead in the second half. It felt like at times last season where that was a difficult spot for your team, that weren't able to respond maybe in the same way. You did it against Pines. You came back. You won the basketball game. And likewise against West, who came out and shot the ball exceptionally well in the first half. You handled the best that your opponent gave you. Is that part of experience for you and your teammates that, hey, just take a step back, take a deep breath, everything's going to be okay, and then not let the game get away?
Oh, yeah, for sure. We have 7 seniors on our team, and we're all really experienced. And, I also think it comes in with hard work. We got a lot of guys on the team that, work hard. And then, Isaac obviously hitting that game-winning shot. He's hit that shot over me probably 100 times when we're playing one-on-one. So we've worked really hard for that. And then it's cool to see it pay off.
And how important, just to you personally, how important is it that, you got this group of 7 seniors? I remember I think watching you guys in middle school play Pines in the Newman gym at one point when they were younger, 6th, 7th grade, somewhere in there. So you guys have been playing together a long time, and the growth, and then seeing the excitement, and it culminate off Isaac's shot, and everybody luckily not gang tackling him and piling on him, but they were all there right in his face, as happy as he was to hit it, and they're all celebrating. How important is that camaraderie that probably, if you see it exists like that on the court, it also exists off the court?
It's really cool. Isaac, he hit one of those shots against Marathon when we were sophomores, and, just the one against Northland Pines kind of just hit a little bit different. They're big school, really good team, and, just for him to hit that shot, it's just amazing.
Well, I was going to ask, what's your team's vibe right now? I mean, you got to obviously be excited. 1-0 in the conference, 3-0 overall. Been playing some good basketball. How's the camaraderie in the locker room, and how are guys feeling at practice, and looking? What do you guys continue to look forward to?
Camaraderie is really good. The biggest thing, us seniors kind of talked about this, is that we just want to, regardless if we win or lose, we're just going to go out there and have fun, and that's kind of what we're doing this year. It's our last year. I was thinking on the way home from Edgar, I'm never going to get to play at Edgar ever again in my life, so we're just trying to enjoy every moment, and if we win, we win. If we lose, we lose.
Well, I guess there's some positives involved in being a senior.
Yeah.
No problem, Edgar. It's a wonderful place. It's just a hard place to win. Yeah. It is. It's one of those tough places. Again, we're talking to boy, I got myself in trouble now, haven't I? Mason Prey from Newman Catholic High School, senior guard for the Cardinals, our student athlete guest for this week. You've been a 4-year starter. You had some lumps as a freshman, won a lot of basketball games the last couple of years. For you personally, what's the area of your game that's the most different, maybe the most improved since you started as a freshman at Newman?
I'd say the biggest thing is definitely my leadership. Coming as a freshman, I tried to be a leader, but I really wasn't, to be honest. Sophomore year, Coach Marcourt taking over, he really preached into me that, if you want to get to that next level and be the best player you can be, you're going to have to be a good leader. And ever since he told me that, I've kind of just been dialing into that. And then with that, the points and all the stats still come.
And you guys, we were just talking with Coach Weinfurter about the toughness of that conference. I got to imagine, I don't know what players are thinking. Do they think about it that way? Do they just show up and play the next game? Do they look at it as this is a war and we got to be ready to go? What's your thoughts on playing the Merowitz?
It's probably one of the toughest conferences in the area, if not the state. Like last night we go beat up on Edgar, get, everyone's hurt, everyone's battling injuries, and then one day of practice, hopefully you have a good practice, but if you don't, you're kind of screwed. And then, we go over to Athens tomorrow, who's one of the best teams on the other side of the conference. So, like you were saying, just night in and night out, it's always going to be a battle.
I want to go back on the leadership aspect. How do you show leadership? What are the things that maybe you are able to do, both in terms as somebody that is able to do the job on the court as well as you do, and also have the experience of being around your teammates for such a long time? How do you use leadership to help make your team better?
Like you said, I've been on varsity for 4 years, so I've been around a lot of guys, and I have a lot of college buddies who play basketball, so just, taking advice from them and then just really, dialing into the younger guys so then when they get up there that they're ready to go.
I know Coach knows when a guy loves basketball, and you've always seemed to be a kind of guy that craves basketball, doing the things that it takes to become a better basketball player. What is it about the game that's kind of driven you and drew you to it? And because you can see it, that you're more than just a physical presence out there, but you seem to know how to play the game. What are the areas of basketball that really connect with you?
Honestly, it's a really good question. I've never really thought about that, but ever since I was a little kid, I'd go to the Y with my dad, and Mr. Gress would see me there all the time, and I just I kind of fell in love with it. I think it's probably the competition aspect where I found something that I'm really passionate about, and I'm fortunate enough to be good at it. So if I can go out there, compete, and just do whatever I can to win, then that makes me feel really good. And
what would you to share your journey and your hard work? I mean, he lives at the Y. He's right. He's there all the time working on it, even now when you could be totally in tune, you're still getting free throws in their shots, and the AAU aspect of all the time, all the extra summertime, playing one-on-one whenever you get a chance, whether there's going to be 2 guys at open gym or 20 at open gym just showing up. How important has that love of the game been for you to instill that work ethic in you? And what would you say to somebody listening that's like, to get to the point that I think I'm at as me as an individual, here's how hard I worked, here's how much I logged, how important is that work ethic?
Yeah, it's really important, but I've accomplished some things in my career, but at the end of the day, I'm not satisfied. We have a lot of work left to do. It's our senior year, so we still have a lot of goals. And then, just in life in general, it's taught me, just not from a basketball standpoint, but, in school, I'm studying, I'm getting good grades, and just life in general, it's taught me how to be a better overall person.
Let's go in that direction, because we'll talk again about what you want to accomplish here in your final high school basketball season. As Coach Gress said, you spend a lot of time working on your game. What do you do to get away from it? What are the things that you enjoy doing to relax a little bit when you're not studying or you're playing basketball or working on your basketball? What puts a smile on your face?
In the winter, if I'm being honest, it's all basketball. But in the summer, me and Isaac, we pretty much went golfing every single day. We love to golf. I like the outdoors. I like to hunt and fish too, but other than that, it's just basketball.
You ever golf with Croc? I hear he's pretty good.
I do, yeah. Me and Isaac beat up on him a few times. He won't like that, but it's true.
What's your favorite class?
Right now this semester it's probably ceramics.
What is the best part of going to Newman? Because it's different. It's a smaller school. Of course, you're right across the street from the big Wausau West, which you knocked off by 13 the other night. What's the biggest things that draw you to being at Newman Catholic?
The biggest thing for me is just, the friendship that I have with my friends. We've ever since preschool we've been going to school together, and we've all stayed at Newman. We all grew up at Newman, and it's just, we've built such strong relationships that I hope can stay with us forever.
And how about I don't know, looking forward? What's you go. You graduate, stuff's gone, you miss it, your high school career has ended. What's What's the next journey that you want to go? What's your hopes? What's your place? I mean, do you have places picked out? Do you have places you want to go, or are you still kind of weeding through all that?
I'm still waiting. Just gonna play out my senior year and then see where that takes me. But I mean, hopefully play college basketball somewhere, wherever that it may be.
What's that like? Because how do I put this? Sometimes it feels like certain players get a lot more attention than others when some others should be getting. And I guess I would say that maybe you're a little under the radar for whatever reason, despite the fact that you've been able to be so successful during your high school basketball career. I imagine that there's a little excitement when you get a chance to talk to a lot of folks at the next level, but also there's got to be a little bit of stress as well. How do you try to put it all together in order to make sure that it doesn't affect adversely what you're trying to do on the court? Because you're trying, obviously, to win a lot of basketball games with your friends and teammates, but at the same time, you're trying to put out your best performances as well. I guess there's a lot of different angles to it, isn't there?
Yeah. I have in the back of my head that whatever happens, happens. If it's not God's plan for me to go play Division I basketball, then it's not. Just whatever God wants me to do, that's where I'm going to be.
Again, we're talking to Mason Prey from the Newman Catholic Cardinals. They'll be at Athens tomorrow night. It's a game that we'll have for you live right here on Bull Falls Radio 98.9, starting with the pregame show at 7 p.m. You've had a lot of success the last 2 years. I guess to be blunt, they both ended on pretty lousy nights where it felt like your team did not play maybe as well as you had for most of the season. Is that a little bit of a chip on the shoulder of you and your senior teammates going into this year?
For sure. Us 7 guys, we lost in the regionals 2 years ago, lost in the sectionals last year. So, I mean, the main goal is to get to that state tournament, and I think we have a really good chance to do that. And, we're probably going to have to get past Columbus. And, them knocking us off last year, that really hurt us. And it even made me put Columbus as the background on my phone. So whenever I open my phone, I see them every day. So, yeah, we got a big chip in our shoulder.
What is the biggest thing your team has to get better at in order to challenge a team like Columbus and the other really good basketball teams, both in the Merriwood Conference South and ultimately down the line as well?
It's still early, but right now we really only have our 7 seniors that are seeing the floor. So I think in order for us to hit to that next level, we really have to develop a few more guys, which is what I'm trying to do my hardest at practice. We got a couple freshmen who could come in and play minutes, maybe a few sophomores, 1 junior. So we're just trying to do our best we can to develop them.
And, I've already seen you guys make some, not different adjustments, but there's just another element, which you guys are all a year older too. I mean, I like when I watch the games I watched. I like the stingy defense. It's complicated. You guys all got these wingspans. You got some size to try to get the ball around. It's difficult with those regards when you're in that man. And then what else I liked is, we know everybody had that. Guys can shoot the 3, and people want to shoot the outside ball, and it's there all the time. And then you're able to go in and out and provide some points off drives or some short shots, or some guys were going and banging around the post a little bit and finding those mismatches. What's the thing that you think is, Chad just asked you about anything to improve on or keep working. What's the strongest part about this team that makes you guys
click?
Click or a nightmare match or whatever you want to call it. It makes it difficult. What do you, in your mind, this is what we're about, and you better scout it or you're going to have problems.
We kind of hit on it already, but definitely our team chemistry, which, that leads to we all have trust in each other and we all know our roles. I think Coach Jeff did a great job as soon as he came in of telling people their roles and, what they can and can't do. And, just we all trust each other and we all play off each other very well, and that's great to have.
Who's your favorite team to play? Who's your favorite rivalry right now?
In the conference?
Yeah, it could be the conference. It could be anywhere. I mean, who gets you going when you know that you're going to go out and compete?
I really liked playing West the other day. I mean, I only played them one other time when I was a freshman, but it was just really nice to beat that big school.
Let me pick on that just a little bit because that's interesting because I know last year I was disappointed because I get to see them all the time. I get to see you all the time. I imagine that there's that feeling of the old little brother aspect to get a chance to the inner city, the guys that you see around in workouts. So there is something that is special about that, and being able to come across the street for a road game. I imagine there's a lot of different elements that kind of made that special, didn't it?
Yeah, obviously I had a very nice night scoring the ball, but I think the biggest thing from that game I took away is just how well I defended as well. I had 40 last year up in Prentice, but, it didn't really mean anything. I think it, the 40 meant a lot more just playing at West in front of the home crowd and in front of everyone here.
And do you find it as the scorer that you are, the shooter that you are during games, is it more difficult to go into some of those bigger gyms if you end up in a field house versus some of the small schools? Because you practice and you got the backdrop of the stage and the mats on one side. Newman's obviously a lot tighter in size. Is that something you think about? Doesn't phase you? Hoop is 10 feet in orange, doesn't matter?
I mean, I hear a lot of people say that, but at the end of the day, a shooter's a shooter. So, I mean, it really doesn't affect me.
How about first off, you've played a lot of basketball. Is there a team that you would, from maybe a buddy on an AAU team or somebody you played against or somebody you've watched in the high school circuit right now that's not on your schedule that you'd like to play against?
I wish we could play Everest. Yeah.
Why Everest?
I don't know. I mean, we play AAU with a lot of those guys.
I was going to say, a kid like Paul would be nice to go one-on-one with them.
They're really good, too, and I think me and Marcus would be a good matchup.
How about family members? Obviously, for people that don't know the history, your dad played at Newman. You guys ever go around the table and say, your dad tells you want to do things and say, no, I'm doing this better. I've seen a game.
Yeah, pretty much everything we do now is a competition. All of his records. He's getting mad when I beat him and all that, but it's all love. So.
Yes.
What is your highlight so far of your high school career?
Oh man,
you had a lot of them, so. Could be within the last few days.
I'd probably say the Wausau West game last weekend. That was a big time game, and it was really fun.
Anything else, Jeff, before we get to the final question?
I was going to go to the final question.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, so we've talked. By the way, a couple things to add to with. We talk about the coaches and the players we have on here, and you don't get to see that listening to the radio. But when Mason walks around our school, he's so great with. There's a lot of people would like to just kind of maybe put their footprint on middle school kids at times, and Mason's great with those younger kids and high fives and a good friend and teammate, and you can just see that aura about him and his buddies, and I always think that's something that's pretty cool because we have unique to our building that's 6 through 12, so and not something everybody gets to see, and I think that's a big deal on how well-rounded he is on everything that he does, So, those little kids, they're high-fiving you. They want to come see you guys and you and your teammates. And once one of them gets to that freshman level, or any kid that does, what advice would you give them based on what you did and the time you spent? What would you tell them is the biggest deal if they want to make the most of their time in high school, more so as an athlete?
I'd tell them to just work as hard as they possibly can. And whatever that looks like, I mean, just at the end of my career, I want to be able to say that, I did everything I could, and if this is where I got, then that's where I got. And then at the same time, if they work hard, I want them to know that never be satisfied, kind of what I was touching on earlier. I mean, we still have a lot of work left to do, and we're not satisfied with it, so.
Congrats on all the accomplishments up to this point. Best of luck as you continue in your senior year.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you tomorrow night over at Athens. And again, thank you for spending a few minutes.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Chad.
Mason Prey from the Newman Catholic Cardinals. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and look ahead. Plus, we're going to talk about the favorite sport of Jeff Gress. We're going to talk about some hockey because he just loves talking hockey.
Ready, I'm fired up. Hey, at the break, you can tell me what icing is.
Very good. We're going to take a quick break and be right back. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO. With Jeff Gress, I'm Chad Holmes. Thanks again to our guests, both the Auburndale head basketball coach on the boys' side, Chad Weinfurter, and Mason Prey as well. Where's he heading now?
We gave him a hard time when he left. He's going to the Y, but he said he's starving. He's got to get something to eat. So
I am too, actually. I always wait till tend to wait till after the show. So you shouldn't have said that. Now I'm really
sorry. Well, I can't talk about food, right? But again, getting back to our point that we always conclude the interviews with is that they or conversations, I'd say, is that they just quality. Great to hear what these coaches and players have to say and the things they have to share. It's the best part about what we get to talk about every Wednesday.
Well, let's talk some hockey.
Second best part is hockey.
Yeah, there you go. But we got into the season. Wausau West played last weekend at the Eau Claire Memorial Meltdown Tournament. And it was a bit of a rough start for West. They fell to, I think, what will be the number one ranked team in the state when the first poll comes out. Notre Dame Academy Friday, 8-1. Grant Homestead had a power play goal for West, but Notre Dame had a 45-15 edge in shots. The Warriors then fell Saturday to the host school, Eau Claire Memorial, 2-0. Goaltender Parks Gunther in his first start had a nice game for West, 42 saves. But again, West outshot 44-21 in that game. But last night, a really good game that we had right here on Bull Falls Radio. Warriors in the Wisconsin Valley Conference opener defeated Wisconsin Rapids by a score of 5-4 in overtime. Freshman Cooper DuPoit had a game-winning goal for West. Carson Gauze had a hat trick for Wisconsin Rapids, and the thing that kind of jumped out, West had 44 shots on net, Rapids had 28, much more West-like in terms of carrying the play. And as you well know, I mean, there's adjustments. Early in the season, West always plays in that Eau Claire tournament, and I was saying to Coach Brandt afterwards, some years ago 2-0, some years ago 1-1, some years ago 0-2. But in the end, did you get better? And he said they got better, and I think it showed last night.
Well, and that's the big deal when you play these early season games, no matter what the sport is that, you're throwing your team a little challenge, and you got to love the start of the season because it shows you what you're doing well on and what you got to work on, and gives you that perspective of what you want to work with your team to make them better.
Also last night, really interesting game. Stevens Point, the team that's expected, I think, at this point to be the favorite in the WVC, they shut out Mosinee 4-0. A 4-goal second period for Spash. Hunter Christian had 20 saves for the Panthers. Aiden Karstop, 34 shots for Mosinee. Mosinee off to an 0-2 start. And also a team that going to keep an eye on in the WVC is Marshfield. They're off to a very good start. They won 3 games in a row. They defeated Stoughton Friday, 9-2. Noah Peterson and Charlie Kenny had 2 goals each for the Tigers. They had a 57-13 edge in shots. Marshfield then defeated Black River Falls, I should say, on Saturday, 4-0. Tyler Reisman, 2 goals. Cole Halverson, 21 saves. And last night, Marshfield defeated Wapaka 3-1. Noah Peterson, 2 goals. Cole Halverson, 25 saves. Marshfield has 2 big tests coming up. They were dominant in those 3 non-conference games. Tomorrow night, they travel to Stevens Point for their conference opener. And then next Tuesday night, Wausau West goes into Marshfield. So Marshfield, the level of competition in the non-conference, not at the level that Wausau West played. Right. But at the same time, there's different ways to go about it. It's about building confidence, getting the team going in the right direction, because they know they'll have the big test coming up in the conference.
Right. And if you can load a little confidence in there right early on, I think that can make a difference in carrying that momentum into those tough games they're going to see out of two teams that are expected to be 1 and 2 in the Valley.
Looking at what's coming up in high school hockey, because, again, not a lot other than the tournaments early on. Tomorrow night, I said Marshfield at Stevens Point. Again, that's going to be a very interesting WVC matchup. Lakeland is at Mosinee. Mosinee trying to get that first win of the season. Antigo is at Medford in the GNC. Tomahawk at Rhinelander. Again, great Northern Conference games. Friday and Saturday, Wausau West again playing back-to-back against non-conference opponents. Waukesha, usually a pretty good team, comes to Marathon Park Friday night. We'll have the game for you here on Bull Falls Radio. And then on Saturday, always one of the top teams in the state, University School of Milwaukee at Wausau West Saturday night. Also a 7 o'clock face-off, also a game that can be heard on Bull Falls Radio. But perhaps the game of the week in the state, Stevens Point at Notre Dame. Notre Dame, and I was talking to Coach Brandt, he said this Notre Dame team could be the best team in Wisconsin in the last 5 or 6 years. I mean, that's
a pretty good compliment.
Yeah, they got a talented group over at Notre Dame Academy. Going to find out a lot about this Stevens Point team on Saturday as well. So Spash at Notre Dame on Saturday. Also, DC Everest. They were supposed to be in action last night against the Northwest Icemen. But the Northwest Icemen could not make it through the ice from the Northwest as that game got postponed. DC Everest will take on Waukesha. Waukesha hanging out here in central Wisconsin over the weekend at West on Friday, at DC Everest Saturday afternoon. And also next Tuesday, that's the first really big night of WVC play. You got West at Marshfield. You got DC Everest at Wisconsin Rapids. You got Stevens Point at East Merrill United. And I'm curious to see, does East Merrill United have what it takes to take a big jump in this league? Because they've struggled, but they got 12 of their 14 top scorers back. They got one of the better goaltenders in the area back. It's going to be interesting to see the Stevens Point Panthers could, in the back of my mind, I somehow think that maybe East Merrill United could surprise Stevens Point. I don't know whether to win the game, but to surprise them, because normally in the last few years, that'd be like an 8-0, 10-0 game.
Well, I was going to ask if you're going to make a bold prediction. There's going to be an upset. I didn't think you were going that route, but
bold predictions.
But you know, that is what it is from year to year. And when you have that amount of returning experience, you hope there's a growth. You hope there's a jump, and that team could bring, even if it's just, you know, changing the discrepancy between the team that wins with the goals and what you had as the losing team. That's what they're going to need to build the type of rapport that's going to take them into the middle of the conference from being in the bottom all the last couple of years.
Absolutely. So I think it's going to be very interesting in the Valley. I think Marshfield has shown signs of being much improved. I think East Merrill United will be improved. I'm curious to see how DC Everest does against Waukesha on Saturday. And then, of course, the Marathon Cup next week. You get a bigger feel for it as well. A week from tomorrow is the semifinals, and then a week from Saturday, the consolation and the championship round. But I do think the Valley will be very interesting. I'm curious to see as well Mosinee as they try to replace so many of their top scorers. I think they're still going to be a solid hockey team, but off to a bit of a slow start. So again, early on, you start to see a few of the seeds for some of these schools as we continue. We're going to take a break and then come back and look ahead. We'll have a nice long segment for Jeff Gress to be able to delve into what we expect to see.
So much pressure on it.
Yeah, but we'll talk about high school boys and girls basketball. And, of course, if there's time, we can always talk about some of the issues that he has on this big, thick pad of paper about interesting thoughts. And
what grinds your gears.
There you go. So we'll have that coming up. It is the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXVO. With Jeff Gress, I'm Chad Holmes, and now we're past Thanksgiving. We go into a more normal weekend of high school basketball, both the girls and the boys. Start off by talking about what to expect here with the boys and Wisconsin Valley Conference. Let's look ahead here to the next week in the WVC. I'm gonna just basically list off some of the games here, and we'll get your thoughts on it. Thursday night, Merrill travels to Mosinee. That's always an interesting matchup. They're both usually D2. And sometimes they face off in the postseason playoffs. Wisconsin Rapids has a non-conference game tomorrow night against Sparta. Friday night, Ashwaubenon is at DC Everest. Marshfield at La Crosse Central. Saturday, there's a bunch of activity. La Crescent is at Merrill. Wausau East at Green Bay East. Wait a second. Is this right? Am I reading the girls?
Wait, no, Wausau East is at Green Bay East. Merrill's at Mosinee.
Is that, I want to make sure I'm the right. Okay, yeah. I am right.
And then you said Marshfield La Crosse Central, right?
Right,
Those are all boys games.
Okay, good. I was confused there for a second. I thought maybe I was reading the wrong list. But you're right. Marshfield at La Crosse Central Friday. And then La Crescent at Merrill. Wausau East at Green Bay East. Appleton East is at Stevens Point Saturday. And then next Tuesday, more non-conference. The Valley does not get going conference-wise yet. Next Tuesday, Wausau West at Ashwaubenon. Rhinelander at Wausau East. Stevens Point at Chippewa Falls. Eau Claire Memorial at Marshfield. Wisconsin Rapids at Mosinee. So, again, lots of non-conference activities for boys teams in the Wisconsin Valley Conference. What jumps out at you?
Well, starters, first game you mentioned, Merrill at Mosinee. I mean, I think for Merrill, they were supposed to play Lakeland last night, and it got postponed. And so they haven't played a game yet. I mean, you're stretching. You know, this is now they'll play tomorrow night. So finally, but that's a long stretch where you know as coaches, I've said a couple times. I think the biggest thing is getting those first games and is to kind of see where you stand and effectively what's working well and what needs to be replaced a little bit or tweaked. I think that's a big game. I think again, some of these Valley teams are getting out and testing themselves. Marshfield, La Crosse Central. Okay, going over there and playing, see what they're made of. Since they're expected to kind of be sitting up there, maybe to steal one game from Everest, you'll get to see where they better stand. I think East, just looking to bounce back after the couple games that they've been in and they've been tight and get over that hump and get that W against Green Bay East over there is a good a game that they want to get under the belt to keep brooding that confidence. And
Appleton East Stevens Point game Saturday. We're intriguing when someone's looking to go see a game because Appleton East have been so solid in recent years.
Yeah, and that was the last one I was thinking of. Is that the youth and inexperience that they have? Again, is it going to be one of those games where we're looking at a pretty big discrepancy, and now is it starting to weigh on you more than it's starting to make you rise up to the occasion? I think that'll be a good test to see what the final outcome is for Spatch.
And the Wausau West, that's Wapanon game. I've liked what I've seen from West. Those two games over the weekend against Stanley Boyd and against Newman Catholic. Again, they fell by 13 to Newman, but that game was much closer than the final score would indicate. The Warriors struggled a bit offensively in the second half, but then got off to a quick start against Eau Claire North last night. Never were threatened and lost 1 by 16. Now hit the road. First time they'll be on the road this year. I'm curious to see the progress that West has. Not a lot of size, but pretty good guard play.
Right, and they again, they have that they're always going to stick you on the defensive side. They really come to play on that side, and over the years we've seen them, just when they've wavered in a game, it's been up and down shooting. But this year, it's been more consistent than it's been inconsistent, with only the little bit of the stretch against Newman, which changed the course of that game. So I think you're going to see some good things out of the players that they have under Coach Lemons to be that team that's always hanging around, always very competitive.
And Marshfield, another good non-conference opponent. Last night they had Appleton East. Came up short 66-52, but next week they have Eau Claire Memorial coming into town. It's also a good measuring stick because we saw DC Everest edge Memorial last night by a point, and now Memorial goes to Marshfield next Tuesday.
Well, and I think that's another thing that's kind of, whether it's, some of these games are set up for different purposes, and you're looking at a couple of teams are playing Ashwaubenon. They're playing common opponents, and so that can kind of give you a gear of where you're going to stand against a conference foe when you play against, when they finally get into it. But again, a really unique way of looking at scheduling that you have such rivalries and teams that you look forward to playing within your conference because you've built these relationships as opponents with them, and theirs is always so far out. There's an element of a pathway leading up to that where you could also flip the other side of there's more games where our players could get beat up. We could be coming in injured into our conference schedule or other dynamics that can happen. So I think it's just one way of looking at it, and at least the Valley does it consistently, where they set that conference schedule together, and it'll be interesting to see how some of these games play out over the weekend.
And Rapids, we're going to find out more about Rapids. They travel to Mosinee on Tuesday. And again, I thought what Rapids did to despite falling out all those kids against Cuba City, almost winning, then bounce back the next day to win that one as well. I'm curious to see how Rapids does and whether or not they do become more of a factor near the top of the WVC.
Yeah, we need to see if they make that jump. Jungworth and Matthews are putting up some points for them, and obviously where they've been labeled that they're going to finish down in the bottom of the conference. I'm sure they're coming out with something to prove, and that Coach Witter reminds them of that.
Great Northern Conference Friday conference games. Mosinee hosting Antigo. Lakeland is at Medford. Tomahawk at Northern Pines. Again, I'm curious about this GNC. Pines is very good. Mosinee looks like they got some really good talent. Medford has got solid talent. Lakeland, I think, has the chance to surprise. The GNC looks very strong, and that's a terrific first night of conference activity.
Right. I mean, it'll be neat to see what Medford bounces back at when they're so tight and they came back from a deficit with the players that they have when they go into Lakeland. I think Northland Pines is really probably the team in that conference if you want to pick that that's got the target on their back. They're going to be the ones that want to get up to the top of that and hold on to it. And so, again, as all conference coaches and the players speak of it within their own conference, it's as a war. You don't want to have a slip-up. You can't have a letdown. You can't fall asleep one night if you want to be that conference champion at the end of the day.
It's interesting how Medford plays at home against Lakeland Friday, and then they travel to Onalaska on Saturday.
Yeah.
That's always interesting scheduling.
Yeah, back-to-back is always – it's interesting because, especially in those conference games when you go to non-conference. I mean, again, we're talking about high school players, so most of the time they bounce back. From a coach's perspective, though, sometimes, you get a little leery if you don't perform well in that next game. And then which one do you put more pressure on? Because the conference one's a big deal. So I was never a big fan of back-to-back unless you were more into the season where you were rolling and you knew where your team really stood.
Also, one of those games that's kind of interesting when the Valley plays the GNC. We talked about Rapids and Mosinee, but also Tuesday, Rhinelanders at Wausau East. And that's always an interesting game. It used to be a conference matchup before Rhinelander left the league, but often that will have significance as well with the seeding because they're usually both the Division II teams. So that's also, I think, a really good non-conference game on Tuesday.
Yeah, and Rhinelander coming off kind of a tale of two different games. So I think, probably for Coach Lemons, still, looking at what is our identity, because they go play Marshfield and get beat up in their first game, and they come back and have an easy win against Crandon on Tuesday. So I think it's going to be a good test for both of those teams because they've battled over the years when they've played home and away a lot of times too.
Merriwood Conference, and we get into those world-famous crossover games as we talk about each and every year because they do have significance. Usually it would be the South with the edge over the North, and it still is the case, but it always comes down to, for the North teams, which teams can steal a game or two against those beasts from the South, and for the South teams, you can't afford to let any of those slip away. Thursday, there's a couple of games. Newman Catholic at Athens, right here on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Athens undefeated, Newman undefeated early on. Got Edgar traveling to that little gym at Rib Lake, which is always a fun experience for road teams. Then Friday, more crossovers. Marathon is at Shawamigan. Stratford travels to Prentice. Assumption is at Phillips, and Auburndale at Abbotsford. When you look at it in terms of the crossovers, what are you expecting?
Well, my bold prediction is that the South is undefeated. I think obviously Newman with the Athens team has the tougher game because Athens is going to come physical. You got to go over and play in their gym, and they got a couple double-digit scores there, and they're undefeated in their conference and 2-0 overall. So I think that's going to be one of the more athletic teams out there. I think on paper, looking at everything, I think, Marathon also has to go up to Shawamigan, which is never an easy trek because you got to get your players ready to just kind of, hey, we got to get off the bus and we got to go get ready to go. And Shawamigan has, a couple players predicted to win that side of the conference. So that'll be an interesting test for Marathon. And I think Shawamigan has a couple athletic kids up there that can play both sides of the court. Assumption at Phillips, I would think Assumption will get them. Stratford's going to get Prentice. Auburndale will get Abbey, and Edgar's going to beat Rib Lake. Even though, again, we always talk about it with, a really difficult place to play is Rib Lake. It's just that court really suffocates you when you're used to a little bit bigger gym like Edgar is. But I think their physicality and the growth they made from their core group moving on from sophomore year to junior year is going to make that difference. And they played Newman well already.
And a great matchup on Monday, a non-conference game, Auburndale at Marshfield Columbus.
And that's the one we ran out of time with Coach Chad. That's a good one to always talk about because those guys are friends. They set that up every year. They give each other a hard time, and then they waltz into each other's gyms and try to get their teams ready to go for the war that's going to ensue. And a difference. I don't think I don't know Columbus's bench and its rotation, but I don't think they're as deep as Auburndale, so will that be a key factor? Obviously, Columbus is going to love to play from the outside like they do, a lot of pressure defense, and Auburndale with the numbers that they have, where they got nine fairly solid guys within their rotation, are going to look to wear Columbus down. So interesting matchup. Where was that at?
Columbus.
At Columbus. Okay, always tougher to go in the other team's gym too.
And finally, CWC North, Northland Lutheran and Wisconsin Valley Lutheran get together for the first time this year, which is always a fun little matchup for those two schools.
Yeah, that's one of the key games for those two. They get after each other. Northern Lutheran, I think, the last couple of years has had the better of Wisconsin Valley Lutheran. Both fairly light so far on their schedules, in terms of how many games they've played or when they've played, and I think both coming out, looking to prove something in Northern Lutheran. We talked already about the loss to Alman Bancroft, and I believe Wisconsin Valley Lutheran lost to Wild Rose by a 60-35. So that one's always a big rivalry game, and now it has conference implications too.
Before we go to the girls' side, I would be remiss if I did not touch quickly on the Central Wisconsin Storm on the girls' hockey side, because I did not discuss them in the last segment.
I thought about that. I just didn't want to mention.
Well,
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Well, the Storm, again, defending state champs, they opened up their season at their Gobbler Cup tournament in Mosinee last weekend, and they won it. Not easy. They defeated Hayward 3-0 on Friday in the semis, scoring 3 times in the third period. And then Chloe Lemke stopped 32 shots on Saturday as they got past University School of Milwaukee by a score of 3-2. Storm have another weekend where they will be heading off to Stoughton and Madison this weekend, taking on Icebergs and Metro Lynx Friday and Saturday. But again, as we talked last week, they get great goaltending, and Lemke was stellar both on Friday and Saturday. She had the shutout Friday, and the win where you don't see the Storm give up 34 shots in a game very often, and she was outstanding. So I wanted to mention that before we moved further, as well as they look to again be a very solid team on the girls' side. Girls, Wisconsin Valley Conference, non-conference affair coming up on Thursday, as we talked about briefly. Again, both teams need a win. Mosinee is at DC Everest.
Yeah, plain and simple. It's just getting that number notched in the W category. You're hungry for it. Everybody's putting in their time at practice, and you want to come up with that victory. And I think it's going to be a fight for that. Nobody's going to roll over easy. You're not going to have any give-ins, and it's going to be a dogfight because teams that have that 0 mark in the win column early in the season here are really going to be fighting for that.
Also interesting because the WVC on the girls' side does start conference play next Tuesday. The first conference night, Wisconsin Rapids is at DC Everest. Wausau East travels to Stevens Point. Merrill is home against Marshfield. Wausau West has a non-conference game next Tuesday. The 7th team in the Valley, they will host Eau Claire North at the West Fieldhouse. But for base, it's interesting because I think the number 1 seed is Wausau West at this point. They don't play their first conference game yet next Tuesday. But for those other schools, you want to get off to a good start. I think it's going to be a challenge for Merrill against a Marshfield team that's expected to be among the best in the WVC. And I think it's a significant game at Everest, between Rapids and Everest. I think both teams have some question marks. They need answers to some of these questions, and no better way to start than to get a win in that conference opener.
Well, and with the 2 non-conference games they play, they could each be coming in with 1 win, try to fight for that second one, or they could both be 1-0-4 and 1-0-6 respectively. So they're going to be kind of coming to set the tone right away. And again, everybody battles within their conferences. A lot of these conferences are aligned where there's challenges and there's tough games, and you come to play in your conference. You know the rivalries and what you have to do to win those games. So I think that's a significant game in terms of just trying to get 1 in the win column. I think for Merrill Marshfield's expected to be up at the top of that conference and kind of hovering behind West, who's at another level. And Coach DeBoer talked about fighting to try to hang out in the middle of that pack. That's where we're at right now. We're taking an improvement from last year, finishing towards the bottom, to jumping up with significance into the middle, and that's going to be a good test for them right away to see what those girls have accomplished and what they want to do to rise to the occasion to play a good Marshfield team that is going to come off playing Lacrosse Central on Friday.
Great Northern Conference activity on Friday night. Mosinee, after playing at Everest on Thursday, they do travel to Antigo for their conference game on Friday. Medford is at Lakeland, Northern Pines at Tomahawk, but again, Lakeland, tough. I mean, they're going to be tough to beat in that conference. In a sense, it'd be kind of surprising if they lose in the conference this year.
Yeah, I think who they beat 71-31. What team was that?
Shawano.
Yeah. So what I'm saying, they're non-conference games geared up to when they kind of get back into comfort, they went and challenged themselves right away. Took some lumps on those non-conference games. So that 1-3 record is not indicative of what it's going to be at the end of the season. And they're following kind of the same pathway where they started off with a very strong schedule and just got better as the year went on and made it almost down to state. So I think with the point production they're getting out of the Wilmette sisters with 21 and 19, they're going to be the cream of the crop in that conference. And I think they're going to get their first conference win against Medford on Friday.
Merriwood South, or Merriwood, I guess we could call it, because, again, we're going to see some either non-conference and then those crossovers as well. Spencer is at Stratford. That is a non-conference game for the Tigers Thursday. But then Friday, a bunch of crossovers. And probably the best of the bunch is Assumption at Phillips, because last year Phillips actually beat Assumption in the regular season, and this time around Assumption goes to Phillips. That should be a very interesting game.
Yeah, that was the one that when I was filling out my notes kind of stood out to me, because again, Phillips 3-0, Assumption 4-0, both sitting at undefeated conference marks so far. Similar teams to a degree. I mean, each lost a key player to graduation. I mean, they're I don't know if their styles are the same, but they're built kind of the same in terms of their makeup. And different ways that they've come in winning here. Assumption's kind of done enough in some of these games just to win. Might not have been the prettiest win. Phillips is coming off beating up Three Lakes. So I think it's going to be an interesting matchup, but one that, again, can cost you in the loss category if you don't get off the bus right. So it'll be interesting to see where that one plays out.
The other crossovers have Auburndale at Abbotsford Friday, Stratford at Prentice, Newman travels to Athens, Marathon is at Shawamigan, Edgar at Rib Lake, and then next Tuesday back into conference normal in the Merriwood South. Edgar is at Assumption. That's always an interesting game. Edgar always plays them tough, it seems. You got Newman at Auburndale. That's going to be one of those tests for Newman to see how far they have come, because Auburndale obviously exceptionally good. And Marathon is at Stratford, and that game will be broadcast next Tuesday here on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. But the Marathon Red Raiders struggled a little bit after their season opening win. Stratford, we don't have a lot of info quite yet on Tammy Christopherson's team, but again, it's a pretty significant week between the crossover and then the normal conference games.
Yeah, and I think just starting back with, we talked about Newman gaining some of those conference victories and trying to fight to be competitive in all those games. Athens is another one right out of the gates. That's a tougher crossover game. That team's 4-0, 2-0 in the Merriwood North, and they got some girls that are putting up some significant points. So again, a good challenge. And then, as you said, for Assumption Edgar. Borchert is playing well for Edgar at 24 points and 13 rebounds, and Edgar's undefeated right now. So a lot of teams that we're talking about here recently with some good win totals and some questions that are going to be answered right away in some of these games that are played early on.
CWC North, Northland Lutheran play some games this coming week. They got Thursday at Nakusa. They're home against Gresham on Friday, and then home against Rochelle next Tuesday. So an opportunity for the Northland Lutheran squad. And Wisconsin Valley Lutheran is... Do they have a team?
They do not have a team.
I didn't think so. They're still listed as a schedule. That was weird.
I don't think they have a team.
So.
I'm almost not 100%, but I'm pretty sure they don't have a team.
But for Northland... chance to get a rhythm going, play some games.
Well, right. That's a big deal. Is now you want to get into that game schedule as best you can. They're jumping around with some non-conference, some conference games. I think coming off, they haven't played since November 17th, and I think that's a big deal coming out of that game, because it looks like at 54 points and some of the girls' averages that they could put some points on the board. But when you give up 73, there's two sides to the game, and you got to control that defensive end as well to come out with the victory.
And finally, CWC East, and I said it earlier, Wittenberg Burnhamwood's been so very good early, and they got a good challenge in their conference opener on Friday. Shiocton picked to finish third in that conference. Whitburn picked to finish second. Bonduel, the preseason pick in the CWC East, but I think we're going to get an even further view for Wittenberg Burnhamwood against Shiocton.
Well, and I think to keep pace, obviously you got three teams kind of vying for the top there, and I think this is one of these games that it's, you never want to say must have, but it's one of those ones you want to get. You don't want to come out when you're chasing somebody a little bit just because of what has been put on paper for your expectations a little bit, which can guide them at times, you want to come out on the W. So Rognowski is going to continue trying to put their points up and lead that team and do well and keep them atop of the CWC East.
Very good. We got about 2 minutes to go here as we've gone through everybody that will be playing here the next week. Anything on your mind?
Quick question. We each only got a couple seconds to speak about.
And I don't know what this question is, so that's always interesting.
Well, do you think so? We've talked about how basketball all across the board, NBA, college, down to high school, it's kind of just transitioned to everything's around the arc. Mm-hmm. A lot of the games I watched over the weekend, I've seen a resurgence of a lot of inside play. Mm-hmm. You think it's coming back? Or is it too early to tell? Or what do you think?
I think it's too early to tell, but I would not be surprised because as a former coach, I imagine there has to be adjustments. Sometimes I know the analytics say, the percentages say that you should be firing up X number of shots from behind the arc, but maybe there's another way to skin the cat. And there's always going to be adjustments. You never feel like, hey, this is the way it's going to be, right? In. So maybe the coaches see something a little differently.
I see. I liked it. I saw a lot of teams, just that had some success over the weekend. They were diving back into the post. Their offense was geared on or predicated on a couple of post touches or inside screens. Obviously, still having to work inside and outside the arc. But I thought some teams that did that, it was kind of nice to see again. Because, a lot outside the arc. The teams that can shoot the ball well is not a big deal, but there's times and places where you need that inside presence, and not just with a true big guy. Could be a bigger guard, could be just somebody that's stronger in the inside that can get some points for you down there. So I kind of like seeing that over the weekend where I thought about that, where it was nice to get some of those inside looks pop back. So we can't say it's a resurgence, but we can say we saw some of it.
Yeah, I think it'll be very interesting to see. Again, as a coach, you have to be imaginative to find the best way to get the most out of your talent.
Yeah, and adjusting your players to what's going to put them in the best spot to be successful.
Well, that's going to wrap up this edition of the Big High School Sports Show. Again, thanks to our guests, Auburndale boys head basketball coach Chad Weinfurter, and also Mason Prey from the Newman Catholic Cardinals. You're going to be late next week, aren't you?
I will. It'll be a lot. So for our listeners, there'll be a lot of hockey till we get here. Just
for the first hour,
get it out of your system.
I think so. That'll be the plan. He's Jeff Grass. I'm Chad Holmes. Again, thank you very much for joining us, and hope you can join us again next week for the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio 98.9.